But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all?
Yes, I know a new episode is coming out soon. It got announced haphazardly as I was writing the script, but I would much rather release this in advance because Clone High is out next week and that's all I'm gonna care about after this. Some of you may think I'm being inconsistent with this video. I prefer the term honest. I really like this show. A lot. My thoughts on the show overall, I must stress overall, have not changed too much. Please just hear me out on this one. I guarantee you I'm not the only one currently thinking these things. Helluva Boss is a pretty massive problem with its storytelling, particularly in the show's second season, and I believe it's beginning to drag prior episodes down with it, and is making me feel rather cautious in regards to the show's future. Last time I talked about the show, I was giving it a lot of praise because I felt the show had become fairly consistent with exploring its characters and their trauma, and it did so in a way that wasn't insanely melodramatic, but also wasn't tonally botched most of the time. I was even one of the few people that made a positive review of the season 2 premiere because I really liked what they were doing with Stolas, and I even felt the direction they went with Stella made perfect sense even if it wasn't as believable as what everyone was expecting. I'm a fan of this show, and I greatly respect Vivziepop and Spindlehorse for producing such a high quality animated show for people to watch on YouTube. There's a lot of merit for this show, and its impact on YouTube animation in general is immense, with each episode racking up tens of millions of views. But to say season 2 has been well received across the board is a puzzling statement that I cannot say in good faith. Despite what the like to dislike ratio may tell you, season 2 has had an incredibly mixed reception from long-time fans who are fully invested in the show's plot and its characters. From being severely wounded from the loss of season 1's final episode, which we still have no idea if it's going to come out, to rushing its plot and character development, constantly resetting the show back to the status quo at the beginning of each new episode, giving multiple characters some of the most unsatisfying writing and attention in comparison to the others, and constantly finding new ways to break its world building. But that's a detail that only nerds care about. Well, it's a good thing that I have autism. That's the wrong image. And the incredibly disappointing reactions from Vivzie regarding criticism of the show, specifically targeting videos that are completely fair in their assessment of the show's issues, has given me a lot less hope that the show will improve. Now, I'm never one to say never, and don't worry, I'm going to get into these specifics soon, and yes, it's entirely possible that the 4th episode could be pretty good, but I have very little confidence that one episode is enough to rebuild what the show has managed to tear down with only 3 episodes. It's not that these episodes are overall bad, except the 3rd one. I think they're still fairly entertaining, but the actual show underneath the entertaining stuff, the core, heart, and soul of this program, is bleeding, and I want to talk about it because it's incredibly interesting and I want this show to improve going forward, and for most of these issues to stay away from has-been, but oops, ship has sailed. Intro over, the stock characters. Helluva Boss is a very character-focused show. A lot of the show's substance comes from the characters, their history, their relationships, and their underlying trauma, and daddy issues too, because why not? My second video on the show goes into great detail with Blitz and Stolas specifically, and how season 1 was near perfect with handling their relationship and exploring Blitz's covered up trauma. I thought it was very well handled and executed, with season 1's finale, Ozzy's being an insatiable boiling point for these two characters and their forbidden love. And when we saw that this finale would be a part 1, we all waited in anticipation for what could possibly come next. But that final part didn't arrive, and still has not arrived to this day due to some legal troubles. In fact, it's so deep in the bog of legality that they just straight up removed the part 1 from the episode's YouTube title. They aired the season 2 premiere stating that the finale of season 1 wasn't that plot significant, and that it mainly involved Blitz and Luna instead of picking up where Ozzy's left off. Season 2 episode 1 does indeed work as a follow-up to Ozzy's, but where do I begin? Season 2 episode 2 makes the galaxy brain decision to completely ignore Ozzy's and pretends like it never happened. The start of the episode would have you believe otherwise. Stolas is angry at Blitz, seems in character, and halfway through the episode with no build up at all, they're back to giving each other the f me eyes and just showing genuine care for each other. It's like, huh? Even if the finale of season 1 wasn't a direct follow-up to Ozzy's, it should have been. Something has to explain this sudden, very dramatic shift after Blitz and Stolas had that massive falling out at the end of Ozzy's, right? Something is incredibly wrong here. No matter how you slice this is just awful writing. How does an ending with such a sense of finality, with such intense emotions, get undermined this easily by the writers just forgetting to write a compelling reason for bringing them back together? There needed to have been more of a build-up here. I refuse to believe that the unseen episode 8 of this show had no major plot moments. If you couldn't tell, I am in a sophisticated state of coping, because I'll gladly take their word for it that there's nothing in the finale that would have hurt season 2, but there should have been more with Blitz and Stolas. The believability of their relationship is annihilated with just one scene, and then the rest of the episode just rebuilds the status quo. It makes no sense. And on what I said a second ago about season 1 handling Blitz and Stolas near perfectly, yeah, that's because the show has pretty much become the Blitz and Stolas show with very few exceptions to the rule. These two are the only characters that the show even seems to care about. It's not like they don't try developing the other characters. I'll get there, but the few scenes they have are scattershot and ultimately weightless because by the time the next episode rolls in, nothing has changed. Moxie is a great example of this. Moxie has had the exact same arc for every episode that has tried giving him the spotlight. Building up his confidence, standing up for himself, episode 6 had a lot more going on for him, sure, but it still ends with Blitz building up Moxie's confidence for admitting his deep admiration for the guy. Episode 6 is the only episode where I think Moxie being developed has actually mattered, given at no point was he ever undermined after his arc was completed. The story can be completely different, whether he's trying to impress Millie's parents and stand up to Stryker, or threatening his abusive mob boss of a father. Yes, the only way they could have given this character more artificial depth was to make his father a crime boss.
My precious Michael, I slammed my balls on a closing door.
It all ends the same way. He has his moment and immediately gets shut down and humiliated before he has the chance to do something that would have made his arc feel satisfying. In X's and Oo's case, it is especially bad after we spend the whole episode getting Moxie's traumatic backstory with his father and the torment he's going through. We get a cool 3D shot of him giving his dad a threat, and just when you think he's finally gonna grab the W in plain sight, he's taken out of the plot, emasculated, and treated like a damsel in distress. The one scene where he should not have had that happen to him, and it just happens out of nowhere. Like, you can't do this to me. It wasn't funny, it wasn't satisfying, it only exists as a reason to give Millie yet another scene where she demonstrates one of her two personality traits. Bloodthirsty killer in this instance. And then at the end of the episode, everything is just okay now, aside from teasing Moxie's dad as a recurring villain because, yeah, we haven't had enough of those already. Actually, we haven't. Where are these guys? The status quo is reset, just like the other times this has happened, and I'm not confident this is the last time this will happen at all. And I doubt this episode will have any further effects on Moxie's character arc. Okay, Millie. Now, I don't expect Millie to be complex like some people want her to be. Not every character needs to go through intense psychological trauma or have a tough upbringing in order to be a compelling and believable character. Although to be fair to these people, I would take literally anything at this point to give Millie any sort of meaningful moment in this show besides being a piece of cardboard wielding a knife. Many people have touched on it already, but Millie is by far the show's most wasted character. Even when there's an episode involving visiting her parents and her own home, she is still not the focus of the episode. She gets no development, nothing substantial ever happens when she's on screen. The only thing she does is be a cute wife for Moxie and slay bad guys in an intense rage. That's it. That's all she does. Viv has addressed this, of course, stating that Millie will be getting an episode later in season 2, but girl, that's one of your main characters. We gotta wait until late season 2 to give one of your protagonists a basic arc? That's just poor storytelling, I'm sorry. Glad you're doing it soon, but like, why wait this long? So you could give Blitz and Stolas all of the spotlight? Oh wait, yeah, she says that in this exact thread. She just admits that the show became the Blitz and Stolas show, which in all fairness was very good before they hit the source, but it only further demonstrates a big issue I've had with this show's storytelling, its story structure, and its pacing. This show is conceived to be about a group of demons starting an assassination business where they are contracted to take out people on Earth. A normal TV show would first show far more episodes where we get to know the main cast and get to see them doing their jobs in comedic one-off adventures, before we dive deep into the story stuff. This show had one normal episode before then giving us a fantastic episode exploring Stolas and Octavia, but regardless of how good the episodes are, it damages the show's pacing and our ability to care for these characters, especially when the first character that gets an episode like this isn't even one of the show's protagonists. Giving one of your main characters their own episode this late after already giving nearly every other character some spotlight, even multiple episodes, it's not good storytelling, and it feels like a rushed band-aid fix to address a common critique people have had for a long time, regardless of whether it's the intention. The most accurate depiction of this issue I can see is that Moxie gets an entire backstory about his relationship with Chaz, and Millie proceeds to get none. Yet for the entire episode we know that something really bad happened between them as she tries to kill him at every turn. We just don't get to see it because she doesn't matter. No matter how much damage control there is, the only thing we know about Millie is that she's Moxie's wife. Give us anything more than that, please. Luna, another hot mess of a character who was originally pretty interesting to think about, for other people far too interesting, but in season 2 she's just incredibly unappealing. The only times she has ever laid a hand on Blitz is to push him away out of embarrassment. Season 2, she just straight up beats him over a suggestion about her behavior towards clients, and continues to do so even when Blitz is clearly hurting and thinking about her. But on top of that, the only molecule of depth we get for Luna is with this scene between her and Octavia, which is a fantastic scene where Luna has a mature, emotionally powered conversation with her, but it doesn't have much of an impact because the entire episode should have been about these two characters, and it wasn't. It instead around with 3 different subplots, all of which were garbage. It torched the main reason why people were invested in the show, and slapped all of this together in what feels like a comedic one-off episode. This moment with Luna would have been so impactful if these two just had an episode together, like what the thumbnail literally advertises. Season 2 has done an indescribably poor job at handling the main cast of characters, and in a show that is largely focused on character writing, that's a massive problem. And even though I do like episode 1, and I honestly don't mind what they wanted to do with Stolas and Stella, it still contains a ton of inconsistent characterization, like simplifying Stolas from someone with questionable morals who mishandled many of his relationships in his life and is learning to better himself through his relationship with Blitz, into a total softie who is incapable of doing anything wrong. And the decision to make Blitz and Stolas childhood friends has honestly really soured their relationship now that I look at it. From catching feelings after a business transaction to being someone who manipulated a childhood friend and doesn't share the same feelings they have for him, only choosing to sleep with them out of pity. I like episode 1, but my god, when the characterization issues are present in your season's best episode, then something had to have gone wrong in the process of writing the show. It takes away from how impactful and emotionally complicated Blitz and Stolas were, and flanderizes them as this perfect stereotypical uwu gay couple with the substance of a goddamn fanfiction. Season 2 has not done enough justice for its characters, and in some cases it actively takes away from them. This section will be substantially shorter, but it still highlights a lot of problems brought about by Season 2. Character is at the heart of Helluva Boss, but that doesn't make its story insignificant or destined to be an afterthought. I honestly enjoyed the story we originally had. I thought it made sense. Then came Season 2, and the first episode admittedly had a few issues and inconsistencies. We've already gotten the character ones out of the way, but they also seem to be directly contradicting important pieces of dialogue that gave us an understanding of what events had happened up to this point, such as Blitz being the one to be forward on Stolas and manipulating them to get his book, which is incredibly jarring after Blitz had made it very clear how upset he was about their relationship only being about getting in bed with each other. And even though I do feel what they did with Stella felt mostly natural, it's definitely a contradiction given if she never really cared for Stolas at all, then she wouldn't be so upset with him cheating on her to the point where she hires an assassin. But even though those issues were present, it wasn't enough to take me out of the show. But the next 2 episodes contain some of the worst writing the series has seen thus far. The show has routinely had a problem with tonal consistency and will often cram jokes into scenes that do not need them, or cramming drama into comedic scenes. Episode 2 is full of this, like the jarring cut to a melodramatic scene between Blitz and Stolas after they're comedically shoved into a van, and suddenly going from a comedic scene of Blitz being on a sitcom straight to a flashback of him adopting Luna, and then proceeding to play his PTSD over someone else's trauma for laughs, as he has a psychotic fit in front of the audience and starts shooting the staff. Episode 3 juxtaposes this surprisingly serious and dark mafia story, and some of the many actually impactful scenes, like Moxie being forced to kill someone, with a number of cringe-inducing jokes about Moxie's sexuality, Chaz being a worse version of Blitz, ramming the episode full of jokes, and several scenes featuring coming out of the walls and chairs. I get the show's thing is that the humor is incredibly immature to the point where it's supposed to wrap around back to being funny, but not only are these jokes not funny, they obliterate the tone. Also, Suction Cup Man did it better, but it's not just the humor that's kaput, so is the overall storytelling consistency. Has-Been and HB firmly established that Hell is composed of different rings, and the one this episode takes place in is the Greed Ring. The Greed Ring is entirely built up of Mafia members, with Moxie's dad being the leader of the Mafia. Good idea on paper until you realize that until now, Hell has had no police system or any sort of jail be of any importance until now. And since the Mafia only exists in real life as an organized crime organization against the law enforcement, and Hell has no law enforcement with people committing crimes all the time, it kinda makes no sense, and seems like a massive world building issue and plot hole, which sorta matters when you're decidedly not an episodic TV show and you feature heavy continuity. Has-Been Hotel has turf wars being broadcast on live television, and suddenly now I'm supposed to believe there's law enforcement in this place? They have a jail! There's a jail in this episode in Moxie's flashback, and he meets Blitz there. Moxie gets caught by law enforcement and is thrown in jail. Law enforcement in this place was just written into the story for this one episode, and it makes no sense. Then there's a bunch of other stuff too, like Moxie's dad being the leader of the Mafia, yet isn't smart enough to check if Chaz was lying about being rich. Millie and Blitz just leaving Moxie and Chaz alive for no reason. Moxie's retcon to have been born in the Greed Ring, when previously he made it very vocal that he was brought brought up in the RAF ring in episode 5. This is a horrifyingly stupid contradiction, and it was so bad that the writer of the episode had to take to Twitter to make up a bullshit reason for this being the case. And if you need to go to Twitter to explain your writing, you've not done a good job. End of story. The parallels between this episode and episode 5 keep piling up, with several scenes being the exact same. It's honestly kind of lazy. The episode ends with yet another recurring villain to add to the pile of ones we haven't seen yet. Episode 3 is just an absolute disaster overall. Like, I could enjoy some of the jokes in episode 2 and the scene between Luna and Octavia, and I overall think episode 1 is good, but episode 3 is just badly written. I could say more, but I think my point has been made with this. Overall, I don't have a whole lot else to say. I mainly wanted to make a quick video because I still like this show, but I don't want the writing to keep nosediving like this, and the crew's reactions to people pointing out issues with the show's writing are laughable. Dire Gentleman did a pretty good video going far more in depth on the parts of HB's story that worked wonders in the past and really got into the meat of why season 2 hasn't been working as well, and it's a very fair critique of the show. Didn't expect Vivzie to make some melodramatic subtweets about the video though. Even on the off chance this isn't about the video, it's such a poor response to criticism being directed at your show, and it's the kind of behavior that she has a pattern of repeating. But I'd really rather she didn't direct that kind of venom towards someone's critique of the show without bothering to listen to it. At the end of the day, the show's still popular, my words are likely not going to reach any of the people working on it, but I wanted to share my thoughts quickly. Chaz was a mistake.